Riverside Board of Trustees regular meeting minute, Thursday, May 20th, 2021. If you could please stand and rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Village Clerk Haley, will you please call the roll? Here.
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 Here. Here.
Here.
Start with the President's report. A would be a proclamation recognizing the 100th anniversary of Pillars Community Health. Whereas on January 24th, 1921, Marion Jean McLeod was hired as the first community nurse in LaGrange to conduct weekly well baby clinics with Dr. Garnier, a volunteer physician, and whereas local welfare associations joined forces on May 20th, 1928, to begin providing social services to Berwyn families. And whereas Pillars Community Health has demonstrated a tireless commitment to meet the changing needs of the most vulnerable residents of the western suburbs of Chicago, including piloting behavioral health programs in the 1950s, launching dental services in the 1960s, and opening a domestic violence shelter in the 1970s and sexual violence services in the 1980s. All at a reduced cost or no cost at all. And whereas Pillars Community Health has long recognized the inseparability of health and the social detriments of health and has helped lead the integration of physical, mental, and social services as far back as the Great Depression, and most recently in 2018, when they became one of the first organizations in Illinois to offer these integrated services under one banner. And whereas Pillars Community Health believes collaboration and outreach are necessary to achieve social and health equity, and has a history of working in partnership with dozens of various schools, hospitals, faith-based organizations, police departments, and nonprofits. And whereas Pillars Community Health relies on more than 200 volunteers to run their domestic and sexual violence hotlines, and childhood bereavement programs, and employs more than 250 staff, including doctors, dentists, social workers, and mental health clinicians. And whereas Pillars Community Health's mission is to improve the health of our communities and empower individuals through compassionate, whole-person care, and their vision is one of communities in which all people have access to the care they need when they need it. Now, therefore, I, Joseph Ballerine, do hereby commend Pillars Community Health on their 100th anniversary and offer my gratitude for their positive contributions they have made to the Riverside community. In witness hereof, I have set my hand and affixed the seal of the Village of Riverside this 20th of May, 2021. B, proclamation honoring retired Chief Thomas Q. Weitzel. If I could, can I have the other presidents in the room please join me at the podium? Police Chief Thomas Q. Weitzel. Whereas Thomas Weitzel joined the Riverside Police Department as a patrol officer in 1984, bringing police experience with him after serving 2 years with the Brookfield Zoo Police Department. And whereas Thomas Weitzel was promoted to officer in charge in 1996, to sergeant in 1997, to detective sergeant in 1999, to lieutenant and deputy chief in 2003, and to chief of police in 2008. And whereas Thomas Weitzel has provided guidance on various policing matters as a guest lecturer, speaker, and has written articles for the FBI Supervisors Command Conference, and South Carolina Criminal Justice Academy Executive Leadership Institute, U.S. Department of Justice, the Illinois Law Executive Forum, and Police Forum. And whereas Thomas Weitzel has received numerous awards and commendations, including the DuPont Kevlar Survivors Club Award in 1987, Officer of the Year in 1996, the Police Valor Award in 1997, the Police Medal of Honor in 1998, and the Cook County Sheriff's Law Enforcement Award of Merit in 2006, and was named Distinguished Public Servant in 2005 by Riverside Township J.C.'s and Public Officials of the Year in 2006 by the Gazette newspaper, and was presented a Leadership Award by the International Association of Chief of Police in 2005. Whereas Thomas Weitzel has graduated and participated in the FBI National Academy, FBI Executive Management School, Northwestern School of Police and Command, and the FBI Midwest Law Enforcement Executive Development Program. And whereas Thomas Weitzel served as Vice President of the Midwest Homicide Investigators Association, President of the West Suburban Detective Association, Police Chief Steering Committee Chair, Coordinating Council Board Member, President of the West Suburban Chief of Police, the Illinois Association of Chief of Police, and NIPUS, and as the leader of Fight Crime Invest in Kids, Illinois, MAD, and as an Illinois and International Association of Chief of Police Legislative Committee and Board Member, and a member of the Juvenile Justice Commission. And whereas Thomas Weitzel is to be commended for his years of public service, the honor he has brought to the law enforcement profession, his dedication to the Village of Riverside, his leadership within the Riverside Police Department. Now, therefore, it is appropriate that I, Joseph Ballerine, Village President of the Village of Riverside, Illinois, on behalf of the entire Village of Riverside Board of Trustees, commend Thomas Weitzel for his 37 years of distinguished service to the citizens of this community, and present him with this retirement proclamation in gratitude for his loyal service to the Village of Riverside and the Riverside Police Department. Riverside is a better place thanks to the devoted service of Tom Weitzel, and we wish him well today and always. Thank you, Tom. Tom, your dedication to the officers of this community is only on par with your dedication to the residents, and for that we are very thankful. I've asked all the past presidents in the village that could come tonight, and they all jumped at the chance. President Gorman did call and said he was out of town, but he wishes you well. So, thank you, Tom.
Don't get much chance to talk anymore, so you know, when you get an offer like this, you better take it, huh? This is really a bittersweet moment for me personally and for the village, but it's also a wonderful moment, Tom, because you're entering on a terrific part of your life, which I hope you're going to enjoy very much. All of us who are here had something to do with your career. You sort of moved up the ranks during my particular administration, and it was an easy choice, let me say that, because you were prepared, and you have created a department here that we as a community not only should be thankful for, but we should be proud of. And, you know, I was thinking of all the things that they were just talking about that you've done here, you know. You can't even get all that on one side of a plaque. But one thing you can get on his plaque, and it probably should be there, I hope it's there, is the character of this man, what he has done, not only for himself, but for his family, for his community, for all of those who he has led here in Riverside, but also he has shared himself with other parts of our community in the suburbs and all of the various leadership positions he's taken. I personally am very honored to have been a part of your lifetime, and I hope you will come back to Riverside and be with us often. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
And here, stick that in your pocket.
Joe DiNatale, and it was my pleasure as a young trustee, and I was young once. In 1984, we swore in young officer Weitzel. He looked like he was about 18 years old, and I can remember saying to the chief, who was chief at the time, and Don Doneski, and I said, you know, this young fella is going to take your job someday because I can tell he's all over this job. He exceeded my every expectation. He has been all over every part of the job. And as I go around in my own law practice, whenever I say that I'm from Riverside, different policemen in other towns will say, boy, you know, for a small department, you guys bring down a lot of drunk drivers, you get a lot of drug heads off the street, you have some kind of a formula. And our formula really is Formula Weitzel, and he has inculcated that in each and every one of the men and women that we have on the department. And to his credit, he has hired top-grade people. I've kind of kept an eye on it. I see them in court. It just makes me proud to know them, and I know that they're from him. I never, in all the years I've known him, I've never had one bad report about Tom Weitzel. I've never had one person complain about him other than bad people. They don't particularly like the way he functions because he stops them from bothering our citizens, as it should be. So it's my honor to know him. It's everybody's honor to have known him as a chief, and everybody that he trained will make this town a better place. Jaime?
Chief, it's been 21 years since I left the presidency, so enough time has passed that I think I can answer this question accurately. It is this: is Riverside a better place for you having served in it? And the question, without any doubt, is it is. It's a better place. We are all indebted to you. This is our families, our lives, our property. Everything is invested in this town, and you treated that so seriously. It was your jurisdiction, and you did everything that you needed to do to keep it safe. So, Chief, thank you so much for everything you've done.
So I was fortunate enough to have my entire term as president with Chief Weitzel as chief of police. And if you look behind us here, you see Tom Weitzel. You see the kind of people that he has drawn into our department. But I think the thing that, Tom, that has impressed me the most is that even here at the later years of your career, you never stop learning. When we had the problems of the last couple of years and the difficulties that we as a nation have encountered, Chief Weitzel did not step back. Chief Weitzel led the charge in terms of community policing and finding a better way for policing. And that's why you see the kind of dedication that his officers have for him. And for that, Chief, I am eternally grateful.
So, on behalf of the village, Chief Weitzel, we have a gift for you, but I would like to say a couple of words very quickly first, so that you don't have to stick around for my manager's report. Thank you on behalf of myself, on behalf of village staff. No one realizes the work and the effort and the sacrifices that you and your family, I see Meg back there, have made over the years. And I appreciate it, not only as your counterpart as a finance director and a department head, but also as your supervisor. And I will miss you, but I know this isn't the end for you. I think it's just the beginning of a new adventure, and I'm really excited for you. So.
Thank you.
You need to open it.
Oh. It's like Christmas. Oh, thank you.
Is it beautiful? I was going to give you this one, but I thought that one would be better.
He switched it out. Yeah, okay. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Thank you so much. Thank you.
It's a little something from the department. I'll read what it says. Chief of Police Thomas Q. Weitzel, in recognition and appreciation of 37 years of distinguished and dedicated service to the law enforcement profession. From 1984 to 2001, congratulations on your retirement. Presented 20th of May, 2021.
Wow.
Tom Sisolak, Riverside resident. It's my privilege to make this presentation representing the Riverside American Legion Post 488 and the Sons of American Legion Squadron, also 488. The citation reads, the American Legion, Department of Illinois, Certificate of Retirement, presented to Chief Thomas Weitzel, Riverside Police Department, in sincere and grateful appreciation for your outstanding and dedicated service. The American Legion Riverside Post 488 wishes to honor Chief Thomas Weitzel upon his retirement and his 37 years of law enforcement service to the citizens of Riverside, Illinois. This certificate of congratulations is presented to Chief Weitzel for his dedication and friendship, which will be long remembered by us all as we continue serving God and country. In witness whereof, this declaration of sincere gratitude is given under the hand of the American Legion Department Commander and duly attested by the Commander of the Riverside American Legion Post 488. We sincerely thank you. May God bless you and our great nation. Signed by Commander Joseph Bar Topinka, Post 488, and Illinois American Legion Department Commander Roy Weber. Thank you very much, Chief Weitzel.
It's not often that I get up and I don't have much to say, but I do have a few things to say. Well, I'm honored that the presidents came. I had no idea, and I was promoted to chief under Jack Whiteock. That's correct. So, and all these other presidents kept me on board when they didn't have to. And you probably wonder how a chief gets through that many village presidents. And I've been through several village managers over the years, too. So I would like to thank President Ballerine
President DiNatale, President Sells, President Wyatt, President Stack, for your support. I'd ask my wife to stand up next to me. Could you come up? She doesn't want to, but she's been next to me for 37 years. So this is my wife, Meg, and we were, wow, we've been married since we were 22. So been a long time. And my middle son, Matt, is back there. He's a police officer for the city of Lockport. So, is my son Peter here? He's a police officer in North Riverside. I have another son who's a police officer in North Riverside, and my brother is a police officer in Grundy County in Morris, Illinois. So, I just have to say how it's been, no chief can be successful without his officers. And this is a great department, great officers. And there's one thing that the president said that I don't want to take any credit for. It's the hiring of these men and women is because of the residents of Riverside. Make no mistake, the police and fire commissioners that are appointed by this board here, they're residents and they care and they participate in the hiring, promotion, and even discipline when that's necessary. But the individuals that serve on the Police and Fire Commission are the ones that do the interviews, to create the list, and they deeply care about the officers on this department because, like I said, they're residents, they're patrolling their streets. So I give all the credit to the Police and Fire Commissioners I've worked with over the years. So I'd also like to thank my colleagues that are in the room. I see them, Lee Zeitlin, for sure. We worked way back at the zoo. And the staff, the senior staff, the current trustees, Kathy Haley, who has always helped me, my administrative assistant, Pamela McCall. I have to make mention, because here's what happens when you're a chief, and especially for a long time like me, 13 years. You have a tendency to believe the stuff you're putting out yourself a little too much, and then the officers, sometimes they won't say things because you're the chief. Not true with my command staff, my lieutenant and Frank Lara and my deputy chief, Bill Gutchick. I always asked them to give me their opinions and tell me the truth. I didn't want to surround myself with yes men. But what Pamela did for me is she's a civilian employee, and she would always correct me if I'd come in front of future boards with documents or reports, and she would read them and proof them for me, and she would say, Chief, nobody's going to understand this. You're talking in police lingo. You have to be clear. You have to be concise. Nobody's going to read your 8-page memo. Condense it to 2. The trustees don't want to read a novel. And she would constantly set me straight and give me a perspective that's non-law enforcement, which a leader needs in my position. So I thank Pam for all those years. And the senior staff here is fantastic. The senior staff I've worked with over the years, it's no exaggeration that it's collaborative and it's a team. That's sometimes overused. But just today, for example, my last day, I spent 6.5 hours today in Zoom interviews with candidates that want to work for the Village of Riverside in an administrative capacity over at the Village Hall, with all of my senior staff members. We all participated because it was important and because we get better products when we work as a team. And literally, I spent 6 hours today with them setting the future for employees that will be coming to the Village Hall. I always feel like I'm going to miss somebody, so I'm going to try not to hit everybody, but I am going to talk a little bit to you about the village manager. Wow. So I was on the team that hired her as finance director. She did the interviews. I was on that team, and then she was elevated to village manager. At the beginning, we had a little bit of a rough time, and then I would think in the first couple years, I probably met with the village manager every day, and I still meet with her every week. But I literally probably met with her every day when she was elevated from finance director to village manager. And, we had our discrepancies, and they were good because we always worked something out, or we always were able to come to a resolution. But you wouldn't, as government officials, you wouldn't just want some rubber stamp. She always held me accountable. She supported me. She didn't always agree with me. And she told me that. And she was never afraid about walking in my office and saying, this is wrong, or this is wrong, or I don't like this. And I would push back, and sometimes there were times that we didn't speak to each other for 3 days. But we would always end up working it out and working it in, because let's face it, my position and the position of the police department is high profile, and she knew that. She knew that decisions that I made and the actions that these officers did reflected on me. They reflected on the elected officials, on the village president. She was well aware of that. So her job was a checks and balance, was to keep me from a perspective of just wanting to move forward with just these law enforcement issues and maybe to look at things in a different light. And she's very good at that. She's very gentle at that, to tell you. She doesn't just come in the office and tell you you're wrong, but I get the message. But I've always respected her, and we've always worked collaboratively together. So that I'm immensely thankful for. I can't tell you how Manager Francis has helped me grow. And I want to once again thank the officers, everyone here. They're fantastic. But I would leave you with one thing. So when I got up this morning, my wife decorated the house like I was 10 years old for retirement. But the last thing she gave me when I want to read you, you're going to find this to be kind of funny, but when I was kind of sad. And she wrote down a quote for me this morning as I walked out the door from Mr. Rogers. And my wife handed me a piece of paper, and it said, often, when you think you're at the end of something, you're at the beginning of something else. And then I came to work this morning. So I just want to thank my wife for all the years and everyone else. So thank you very much, and thank you. And Jessica, thank you.
Yeah, I do want you to stay, as a matter of fact. Good evening, everyone. And members of the board, it's a pleasure to finally meet all of you, and thank you for letting me come up here for a second. My name is Jim Episcopo, and I'm currently serving as your interim director at the 911 Center, WC3 in North Riverside. Prior to that, I retired 2 years ago as chief of police in Brookfield, where I served 33 years. So not only do I appreciate what Chief Weitzel has contributed to our profession, but I'm also proud to call him my friend. We're all going to miss him a lot. And I thought I'd share a special moment today that happened on the radio. It's kind of traditional on somebody's last day. 1042 is the code for ending your tour of duty. So today was Tom's final 1042, and I want you to hear how it went. I hope you can hear it here with the mic, but I'll...
Riverside Unit 500. Riverside 500, go ahead. Riverside Unit 500 is 10-8, 10-42, and 10-6. Riverside 500, it's been an honor and privilege that we bid farewell on your retirement from the Riverside Police Department. Your brothers and sisters in blue, thank you for your 37 years of service to law enforcement. Chief Weitzel, it's been a great honor working with you, and you will be greatly missed. All of us at Riverside PD and the surrounding communities will forever cherish the memories we have working with you. Thank you for the dedicated service to the citizens of Riverside, and congratulations on your retirement. It is with great pleasure that on May 20th, 2021, at 11:57 hours, Chief Tom Weitzel is 10-7 for the last time. Thank you. It's been an honor and a pleasure to work with everybody on the radio frequency, and stay safe. Congratulations, Chief. Congrats. Chief, on behalf of the entire Brookfield Zoo Police Department, We want to thank you for your service, your dedication, and commitment to law enforcement. You are the best of the best. Congratulations and good luck, Tom.
Congratulations, Chief, from all of LTEC.
The Police Department.
Congrats, Chief, on behalf of Mocook PD.
Thank you all. Congrats, Chief Weitzel, and good luck from the Brookfield Fire Department.
Congrats from CPPD.
Congrats from the North Riverside Police Department, Tom. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, of course, PD. Good luck, Tom.
Thank you.
Congrats from WC3, Chief.
So I think on top of the send-off, not only the send-off, but all the people that chimed in is certainly a tribute to the respect that Chief Weitzel has by everybody, and we're going to miss him a lot. Thank you, sir.
I need help to get this back.
Can we make comments? Sure. Please. I have something to say.
Tom, if you could Tom, Chief Weitzel, if you could just 1 second, please.
I wanted to just thank you for your leadership, your decades of leadership to the community. You've always risen to the challenge, especially in the past year, not only in dealing with COVID, but with other social issues that have arisen and many try to avoid. Under your leadership, Riverside Police Department committed to the NAACP's 10 shared principles. In your capacity as a very well-known and well-respected police executive in Illinois, you've also advocated for development of a national standardized use of force policy, a national certification process to strengthen police accountability, and creation of a national police misconduct database that agencies can use for hiring. You've never shied away from tough conversations with the community or with me, and you've been our rock, ensuring our safety for so many years. You are leaving Riverside in a better place, and I wish you nothing but the best in your retirement.
Thank you so much, Trustee Evans. I truly appreciate those kind words, and I do. And I can tell the board and the manager that Director Buckley is in good hands and the department's in good hands. You know we've been friends for years. It made no difference, police or fire, but you made a good selection, and we've been working together for the last months. So I have full confidence that the agency going forward will be outstanding. So thank you.
Okay, we move on to the manager's report.
I have nothing to report this evening.
Do we have any resident comments this evening? Yes, sir.
My name is David Barsati. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you tonight. Should I take this off or? Yeah. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm here this evening to talk to you about the proposed Groveland flood wall. I'm not here to speak in for or against it, but I am here to speak to you about two major concerns I have about the process in which the village is undertaking to evaluate the proposed flood wall. My first concern is on March 25th, I submitted a FOIA request to the village for hydraulic modeling that was used by the United States Army Corps of Engineers to state that the proposed flood wall in Riverside will not increase flooding downstream, upstream, or to the west of the Des Plaines River. If you recall from those presentations that the Army Corps gave, they showed before and after flooding, and before and after with the flood wall, and the water magically just disappeared from the east of the flood wall and didn't go anywhere else west of it. That just doesn't make sense to me. So I made that request. I received a response back from the village stating that the village does not have this information and I should make my request directly to the Army Corps of Engineers. I was offered the opportunity to review the flood maps though. Well, I made the same request to the Army Corps and they provided me a report, which I sent to all of you a couple of weeks ago. My concern is that the village is not receiving all the necessary and relevant data on the proposed flood wall. The village appears to be doing minimal due diligence in considering a flood wall, which brings me to my second concern. If you read the report that I sent you that was provided again by the Army Corps of Engineers as justification for this project, you would quickly realize that what is being presented to the village does not exist anywhere in the report. I want to repeat that, for this is very important. Nowhere in that report does it recommend or offer as a possibility of what is being currently considered by the village. According to the report, in order to alleviate flooding along Groveland, the United States Army Corps of Engineers recommends not only erecting a flood wall, but also making significant modifications to the BNS Railroad Bridge, elevating First Avenue, elevating Forest Avenue, and adding pumping stations. Now you have this new information, and I hope you have a lot of questions, for I do. I mean, one of them is, why has the Army Corps of Engineers not mentioned this report or provided this report to the village? How can the Army Corps of Engineers state that there will be no negative effect from the proposed flood wall when the report that they use for justification for this project doesn't even recommend what's being proposed? There are so many questions that need to be asked. The village must do a better job in evaluating the proposed Groveland flood wall. You must ask more difficult questions of the Army Corps. At the very least, the village should conduct its own independent analysis of the flood wall. And please read the report if you've not already done so. The flood wall that you are considering will have significant implications for the residents of Riverside, and you must be evaluating this project with all the available information. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Would anybody else like to address the board? Okay, we move on to the consent agenda. We have several items on the agenda. Approval for the voucher list of bills, May 20, 2021. Approval of Village Board of Trustees Sindai meeting minutes, May 6, 2021. Approval of the Village Board of Trustees regular meeting minutes, May 6, 2021. Receive and file Riverside Police Pension Board meeting minutes, February 11, 2021. Receive and file department reports for April, Community Development, Finance, Fire, Police, Public Works, and March Community Development Report. Receive and file Police Department 2020 Annual Report, and a resolution authorizing the sale or disposal of personal property owned by the Village of Riverside. Is there anything on here that any trustees would like to be removed? If not, if I can have a motion and a second.
Motion made to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you. Alex, second.
Second.
Thank you, Megan. Village Clerk Haley, could you please call the roll?
Aye.
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 Board and commission reports. Tonight we have a presentation and acceptance of the Landscape Advisory Commission Landscaping in a Landmark Village, second edition. Chairperson Maloney.
Thank you all for having me, and welcome to the new trustees. Thank you so much for volunteering. I'm glad to meet some of you. Hopefully in your packet you have received the revised landscape brochure, we call it. We're asking you to approve that tonight. There's a couple reasons that we think it's particularly advantageous to issue it now. We've been fortunate as a village to have, as I understand, some very brisk housing market influx of new residents into the community who may be looking for information like this. What does it mean to have both a private garden and to have public landscapes in a National Historic Village? It's also planting season, so everyone who has been holed up over this challenging and difficult winter and year is now getting outside and wants to do some planting. So this is a revision. It builds on an earlier 10 to 15-year-old document that our predecessors in the Landscape Advisory Commission created. Some of the major revisions include the fact that we've acknowledged the fact that we have recently been certified as an arboretum, and what does that mean to residents of Riverside. Some discussion, there's a lot, has been, from the questions we get, clarification of property lines, right-of-way, planting within right-of-way, and so forth. Lists, rather extensive lists of plants, particularly native plants that are bird-friendly and wildlife-friendly. In particular, some examples of how to design with native plants. We found over the years that not everyone is a native plant enthusiast, a lot of times because they don't know how to use them in the landscape. So we've included some information about that, as well as how to incorporate, if you're not into native plants, how to incorporate non-natives into a native plant garden. So those are some of the changes we made to a very good document. So with that, we will be having, thanks to the Riverside TV crew, a video that goes along with it. Some of us who starred in the video have to redo their voiceovers because some of us were not intelligible enough in the original one, so that means me. So that's coming out a little bit later, but we're looking forward to giving you that as well. I'm here if you have questions, now or later.
Thank you, Kathy, for all the hard work you do.
Sure.
Appreciate you and your commission. We hope to see you here often because we do have an actual agenda item for board and commissions to come and address the board. So, second is the Planning and Zoning Commission recommendation regarding enhancing habitable spaces above garages. Director Kashima. And I will also say that tonight we also have Chairperson Mateo, so if anyone has any questions for the chair of the PZC, she is here to answer them too. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, my name is Courtney Kashima. I'm founding principal of an urban planning firm called Muse Community Design, and I'm serving as your interim director. So what you have in your packet is a summary of the conversation first started last fall. At the February meeting of the PZC, they further discussed the issue of habitable spaces above garages, particularly 3 issues you see here: whether to permit them, whether to revise regulations clarifying plumbing in accessory structures, and whether to revise the regulations on maximum size for accessory structures. With that, the consensus of the commission was that regarding habitable space above garages, they were not inclined to revise the bulk regulations in particular on that matter, feeling that the bulk and the process allows kind of the full range of options available to property owners. There was consensus that there's probably merit to revising regulations on the plumbing issue in accessory structures, and there was consensus on the issue to revisit the regulations on maximum size for accessory structures. Right now it's 12% up to a maximum 800 square feet for all accessory structures, and there was general interest to perhaps draft a text amendment that would keep the 12%, in addition to the current building coverage and impervious surface coverage maximums, but change the specific 800 square feet to per structure instead of in aggregate. So I'm happy to answer any questions, and as you said, Chair Mateo's here as well.
Thank you. Trustees? Any input? Doug, please.
I'll go first, thank you. I listened to the Planning and Zoning Commission's discussion. I appreciate very much their direction on this, and I'm in agreement with most of what they had discussed. The one aspect of it, though, that I didn't necessarily agree with was I felt that they were overly concerned about the potential of someone converting an accessory building into a dwelling unit. Certainly that's possible. I think that's possible no matter what we do, even if we adopt this code or don't. If someone's going to do something like that, we have enforcement mechanisms that we can address that. So the particular issue is the plumbing. The Planning and Zoning Commission did not want to allow full plumbing in a accessory building, meaning water closet, toilet facilities, etc. Just a sink and running water. I'm fine with allowing full plumbing in an detached accessory building. A lot of people may want to build a pool house. It's very common on large residential lots. Or they may want an accessory office that they use for a home office and want to have full plumbing. I would hate to penalize those people because one or two people might someday abuse that privilege. Someone who would abuse that privilege would probably abuse it anyway. So, and as I said, we have enforcement mechanisms. So, other than that, I'm very in full agreement with the Planning and Zoning Commission, and would be fine with them moving forward with a public hearing to consider zoning text amendments.
Thank you, Doug. Any other comments? Trustees? I agree with Doug that I believe that full plumbing is I think the major concern that the Planning and Zoning Commission was these units would be then turned into dwellings, and we have inspections that would catch that on the sale of property. And again, like Doug said, I think if someone's going to, is going to take advantage, they're going to take advantage no matter what. So I think, because of the pool houses and because of, the size of the buildings that, if people want to use it at office, that I think it is, a good idea to have full plumbing in it. So I would resend that back to the Planning and Zoning Commission for them to have a public hearing on that.
I should probably clarify a little bit the process. The PZC keeps kind of a running list of text amendments that are identified as, something we might want to revisit. So I think there's a strategy here to the timing and sequence of that, whether it would end up being, 3 text amendments or 1. But we could prepare that, draft it, and have a public hearing on it.
Okay, thank you. And we move on to, if nobody has an issue, I'd like to mix up the agenda just a bit to go to pass up pending business, go to new business, item
G?
Item, where is it?
Is it G?
Yeah, G. Where is?
I would also like to
Oh,
move
an
the letter
ordinance,
G
okay.
as well.
Yeah, item, my C's, D's, and G's didn't come out. Item G, an ordinance approving a variation for the maximum size requirement of 800 square feet for an accessory structure at 209 Millbridge. Courtney?
Yes, thank you. And the applicants are in the audience tonight if you have any questions. So at the April PZC meeting, we had a public hearing on this variation request. And the specific variation was to approve a replacement garage. There was a garage, been there maybe 20 years, that was 991 square feet, which is in excess of the maximum 800 square feet, that collapsed under that very heavy February snowfall that we received. So the PZC reviewed the matter, during which we noted and discussed that the property is in excess of the 50% impervious surface maximum. So the recommendation from PZC was unanimous approval with a condition to remove a particular paved area, approximately 240 square feet, to reduce the overall impervious surface area.
Thank you. Trustees, are there any questions for Director Kashima or Chairperson Mateo or the Blooms?
I'd like to make a motion to approve it.
Okay. Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Doug, please. Doug, can you do me a favor? Can you speak up? Because it's hard to catch you down here.
Sure, thank you. Yes, I have no objections to the reasons for the Planning and Zoning Commission's recommendation. As I gathered from listening to that hearing, their reasons were that this was a legally established structure that was destroyed by nature, by snow, and the Planning and Zoning Commission felt that they should have the right to rebuild that. And I don't object to that rationale or that reasoning. What I am concerned about is that this is being done as a variation, because I do not see anything different from this non-conforming building than any other non-conforming village in the village. In other words, there's probably a dozen or more properties in the village that have oversized garages. Why would we continue to tell them that they can't rebuild theirs if it's destroyed by fire or snow, while we tell these residents that they can rebuild it? So my suggestion would be that if the board is in agreement, we grant this variation, but we also direct the Planning and Zoning Commission to consider an amendment to the zoning ordinance, specifically to the non-conforming regulations in the zoning ordinance. Currently, our non-conforming regulations state specifically that if a non-conforming garage building is destroyed by fire or in any way, that it cannot be replaced unless it's made to conform. So I would suggest we modify or consider modifying that to say that a non-conforming building like this can be, just to be consistent. Because as I said, I don't see any reason why we would let one resident do it and continue to tell other residents they can't do it. So I would like, after we take a vote on the variation recommendation, I would like to have that direction considered for the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Ed, did you hear? Sorry.
Yeah, I could pick up the last part and have a comment.
Okay, sure, please.
Yeah, I disagree with Trustee Pollack. I thought long and hard about the underlying rationale. Just as a threshold matter, I agree with the result. But in my mind, this is why the variance process works. If we made anything automatic, there would not have been a reduction to comply with the permeable surface requirements. I think the 800 square foot threshold is a good standard, and I think part of the multi-factor standards that are taken into account were properly applied here. And I would hate to adopt a standard that just let every building that was destroyed by fire or active nature, or in this case snow, be automatically rebuilt. I think it's a process that's in place to make sure that the other issues are addressed. That, is it going to be a replacement, to make sure that it's not going to be a variation other than replacement. So in my mind, this is exactly what planning and zoning should be doing, and I think they did an excellent job on this point.
If I could, I agree with both of you. That's what I'm supposed to do, right? But I think what Doug is saying that is even if a accessory structure that is non-conforming gets damaged, that they can rebuild it to what it is, but they would also have to be in compliance with the permeable surface and all the other standards, the setbacks and everything like that, like the Blooms are. So, you know, in their case, they would have been able to come back and in the building permit process, they would have been able to show their diagram. They're building exactly what they have. They're not increasing the size. The village would say, okay, but you are 56%, I think it's 56 or 53% permeable surface versus non-permeable surface. You would have to bring that in compliance. So there would be a check to make sure we catch the permeable surface. There would be a place where we'd have to check the setbacks, lot coverage and density like that. I think this cleans up the notion of, you know, if a windstorm blows down another garage, how do you square that box? So I understand that. The second thing I would like to say is there was some discussion with the planning and zoning and Chairman Mateo, if I'm mistaken, if you would please correct me, to get into the 50% permeable surface. It was discussed that they wanted, or several of them wanted you to remove a certain piece of property, a pad. Personally, I personally don't care how you come into compliance, but I think the permeable surface needs to come into compliance. So you can either do that by, you know, doing something to your driveway, removing that pad, or some other manner to come into the permeable surface compliance. Because I think that is one thing that we can't kind of budge on, because that's what causes all our issues in flooding. So I think we have at least direction to send these items down to planning and zoning. They will take a look at Doug's idea, and they'll also debate your idea or your thought, and they'll come back to us with a recommendation. So we have a motion and a second to approve the variance. Kathy, Haley, could you please call the roll? Or Doug, I'm sorry, please.
I'd like to follow up on that. First of all, I would like to know the consensus of the board as far as considering a text amendment before I vote on the variation. And second of all, I'd like to ask Trustee Hanna, or maybe it'd be fair to ask the chairperson of the Planning and Zoning Commission, maybe I'm missing something, what is unique about this property that separates it from, for example, my neighbor 2 doors down that has an oversized garage? Why would we grant this variation but continue to tell my neighbor that if their garage burns down, they can't replace it? And second, I would add too, the other option is you could make it a special use instead of a variation if you'd like, but that's another discussion. But I just don't see what's unique about this property. I'm all in favor, I'm fine with allowing this garage to be rebuilt, and I don't want to get in the way of that, but I want to make sure our zoning ordinance has integrity. And if we grant variations that aren't based on unique conditions, our zoning ordinance has no integrity. So I want to know what is unique that's different from this oversized garage in this property that separates it from most, or if not all, the other non-conforming oversized garages in the village.
Most of the commissioners felt that the large garage was a significant feature of the property and was a main reason why the owners purchased the property. Another commissioner stated that the existing foundation made it a particular hardship for the owners. So between those two facts, that the big garage was a feature and that the concrete pad was an existing structure, if you will, both of those then met that standard. As for why it was unique, do you remember what the argument was for that standard?
No, I was going to say Attorney Mars might agree. Nonconformities are probably one of the trickiest parts of zoning. And Trustee Pollack, I know you have a history with it too. And so just to clarify, we note that they simply don't conform. And there are the provisions that if it's over 50%, you cannot rebuild. So that's what kicked it to a variation request. What would be permitted by right is if the homeowners could build an 800 square foot garage because they wanted to replace it exactly as it was. That's what goes to the variance process, just to be clear. It's sometimes hard to hear, so I'm not sure, but wanted to offer that. The PZC had a really robust discussion about the specifics of the properties. The impervious surface was something I noted in my review, but that wasn't what triggered it going to a variance. So I think that's important just to clarify. It was like, well, you could build 800. There's some compelling reasons why to build back to the 991. Is this impervious surface, exceeding the impervious surface, something we could do something about as part of this approval?
Well, I thank you, Chairperson Mateo. I heard the same thing at the Planning and Zoning Commission, that the unique conditions were that they had an existing foundation and that they bought the property because of that oversized garage. I would venture to say that that's true of every single oversized garage in the village, that they have an existing foundation and the property owner appreciates and takes value to the fact that they have that oversized garage. So with all due respect to the Planning and Zoning Commission, I just don't agree with them that that's unique to this property.
Alex?
I do remember when that ordinance went into effect, and I want to say it was like maybe 11 years ago or so.
Can you take off?
Oh.
Thank you.
And it's just a coincidence. Like a week later, we had a huge fire on Harlem Avenue at the garage where it was burned more than 50% down. So it did cause a lot of issues where I had to go back and forth to the planning and zoning, well, then just planning and zoning and back and forth, and then to the board. So I kind of agree with the fact that it's a little outdated if we need to revisit that. So if Doug wants a consensus on whether or not we should revisit that, I would be in favor of that.
Trustees? Okay. You can add that to your list, Courtney. We have a motion and a second to approve this variance. Village Clerk Haley, can you please call the roll?
With the caveats that I just mentioned, I'd vote aye.
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 Variation approved. Now we will go back into order, and I apologize for that. Number 9, pending business. Discussion of the ordinance providing for the registration and inspection of rental properties within the village. Manager Francis, please.
Thank you, President Valerian. I'm sorry. Pardon me. The village board has discussed providing for rental registration and inspection. So you'll notice within the agenda history sheet, it's located on page 163 of your board packet. Staff provided the updates working with Attorney Mars as it relates to the feedback that was provided by the previous board, which I'll reference in the agenda history sheet in the summary, that the ordinance now has reverted back to having the triennial inspections and random or complaint-driven inspections, and that property owners would be billed for the costs associated with the program. And you'll notice we have done a revision to the ordinance and the table, so it would reflect for multifamily units per unit, it would be $55. For single-family homes, that would be $115. And then also included in the draft, you can see the changes that were tracked by Attorney Mars. They are noted in blue, and that is reflected of changing from having the triennial and every time there was move in and move out, having inspections to just having triennial inspections and or complaint-driven inspections. So staff is looking for additional feedback as it relates to this. Our recommendation is based on the feedback from this evening. We would make modifications to the ordinance and the agenda history sheet to be presented in an upcoming board meeting. I anticipate that meeting would be June 17th because we do want to then provide notification to rental properties that we're aware of in Riverside, both single-family homes and multifamily homes. And then after that feedback is provided, based on the timeline, potential board action on July 15th at that meeting.
Trustees? Any comments? Please, Ed.
Just a question. Part of the new language in E4 with respect to exceptions, we have an exemption for a owner rents their dwelling unit for less than 120 consecutive days, but occupy the dwelling unit during the remainder of the year. Just want to understand where that 120 days come and what the rationale was.
You know, that was something that I had seen in at least one other ordinance, and I think the idea is, you know, people may be part-time residents, and other times they are renting at least part of the dwelling. So I don't have any more insight than that. If you're not comfortable with it, we can easily take it out.
Well, the concern is that, you know, in my mind, this immediately brought to mind a Airbnb situation, which obviously is no longer permitted in the village, and didn't want to do anything that would somehow imply that, you know, these short-term rentals are somehow permitted. I'm you know, not against it. I'm just at a loss to understand where that would come into play.
Doug?
Thank you. It's a valid concern, I think, with 120 days. I've seen that particular number, chosen in other villages because it accommodates snowbirds and people who may have a cabin up north in the summer or may have a place in Arizona in the winter and want to rent while they're gone.
So building on that, I don't know that, you know, if they're renting while they're gone, I don't know if that addresses the concern about the Airbnb. I mean, I do think that's the reasoning behind it, but if you think it may open up to those kind of rental situations, we should at least probably look at modifying it to try to restrict that use.
I guess in my mind, you know, first of all, short-term rentals are not permitted. But if you're renting your house out while you're gone for you know, more than an administrative amount of time, which is what's required, I think it's no different than renting it out for a year. It should be inspected. It should make sure it's up to code.
Okay.
I mean, this is sort of a safety issue, and you know, I would think if anyone renting for you know, 3 months, they should be entitled to the same safety protection as somebody who goes into an apartment building and rents for a year.
So you would like it stricken altogether?
I do. I don't see a need for
it. We have the number of units in the village. How many landlords do we have in the village?
Landlords, I do not have that number. We can tell you how many properties. We have an estimate based on multifamily and single family based on water bills.
So is that the 750?
That is the units. Hold on, I don't want to speak incorrectly. So Director Johns has that there is approximately 750 units, and she's assuming an average of 2 people per rental unit. So there are 1,500 people living in rental units within the village.
There's an estimated 175 rented buildings.
That's kind of what I was getting at, 175, okay.
Thank you.
I have a question. The memo indicates that the village projects annual costs of approximately $2,000 annually to process the registration forms. Is that after taking into account the fees that would accompany the annual registration and the inspections? Or is it in addition?
That's just the registration process. So that's the staff time with mailing them out, entering them once they're received, and following up with anyone who has not responded.
Okay, so there are additional costs connected with the inspection process that are not covered by the inspection fees that are proposed?
No, they are incorporated. So based on the board's discussion at the last meeting, the ordinance was updated to reflect the $10 annual registration. But in addition to that, if they had an inspection due that year, they would be either charged, if it was a single family, it would be $115. But if it was a unit in a multifamily, it would be $55.
And that reflects the actual costs of doing the inspection?
Correct, because that would be a direct cost charged to the village from our contractor that we're currently utilizing for inspections.
Is it anticipated that these inspections are going to preclude problems that we might have with finding violations? Is it intended that by having a regular program, we are incentivizing landlords to be in compliance so that they are prepared for these things?
That is correct. The goal is to be proactive and also preservation of property values, not only of the neighbors, the adjacent property owners, but those that are renting out their units, because they're having an opportunity for a very well-versed inspector to come into their property to review different issues and to provide them guidance as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else, any other guidance? I would love to be able to get at least this draft in the hands of these landlords, at least so they know what we're talking about. Not all of them watch our board meetings. I know we got, one gentleman sent us back and some very good comments. How could we get these out in these and get feedback from the landlords?
So the plan of action would be, based on the guidance from this evening, is that we would work with Attorney Mars to make modifications to the existing ordinance and send it out to them in draft form. We do have in our water billing system for single-family homes that are being rented, that are noted as rentals, we can pull that from water billing and send those to them. And then obviously we have the different property rental companies or management companies for our multifamily and those property owners. So that is easy to send out. So we'll try to capture as many properties that are being rented that are single-family homes. I can't guarantee that we will capture them all, but we will do our best.
I think that's a good next step, at least to get some feedback from the property owners. We're not taking any action yet. This isn't law, so I think we owe it to them to get their feedback on such this change. So.
Okay. And the intent will be to invite them to the July 17th board meeting.
I think that's good. Anybody have any issues with that?
I think it's a great idea.
Okay. All right. Thank you. New business. A resolution supporting restoration of the Lgdf revenue. Manager Francis.
Thank you, President Ballerine. Would you like me to read the agenda, not only the agenda history sheet, but also the resolution itself?
I would. I've done a lot of whereases tonight, so thank you.
Perfect. On March 5th, 2015, the Village Board approved a resolution opposing any reduction in the local share of revenues under Local Government Distributive Fund. The Local Government Distributive Fund, Lgdf, was established in 1969 when the state income tax was adopted. The state collects income tax on behalf of local municipalities and then remits a portion of the taxes to each municipality on a per capita basis, rather than each local government collecting the tax. Reducing the local share of the Lgdf may result in a reduction in services that Riverside and other municipalities are able to provide to residents, and a deterioration of infrastructure and facilities if alternate funding sources do not become available. I did provide a history of the village's income tax revenue from 2003 through 2020. You'll notice the percent changes over the years based on different changes that have happened at the state level. Please note that our Lgdf could be subject to adjustment based on our final census numbers for 2020. So, hold on just a moment. A resolution supporting restoration of Lgdf revenue. Whereas municipalities across the state of Illinois provide essential services to their residents that include public safety support, transportation, and storm/wastewater infrastructure and community health services, along with many others. Whereas the state of Illinois has maintained a long-held agreement with municipalities to support and invest in these local services through the Local Government Distributive Fund, Lgdf, which includes the collection and distribution of tax revenues on behalf of municipalities. And whereas since the state income tax was adopted in 1969, state government has shared a percentage of total income tax collections through the Lgdf with municipalities on a per capita basis in lieu of an local income tax. Whereas these shared revenues have been significantly reduced by the state since 2011 from 10% to now 6.06%. And whereas municipalities depend on Lgdf dollars, which can account between 10 to 20% of a municipality's operating budget, to lessen the burden on taxpayers and reduce the reliance on property taxes. And whereas Governor J.B. Pritzker has proposed that the fiscal year 2022 state budget include a further 10% reduction in the amount of Lgdf revenue distributed to local governments, and whereas the revenue reduction has been proposed at a time when municipalities are continuing to spend additional funds on the COVID-19 emergency response, and whereas in addition to Lgdf cuts over the years, the state has also reduced municipalities' share of the personal property replacement tax and increased sales tax collection fees, while cities and villages have to fund skyrocketing pension costs, which account for substantial budget increases each year. And whereas those municipalities with fewer revenue sources, such as retail businesses with higher equalized assessed values on property, suffer the most and will be forced to explore increasing property taxes or cutting services amid further Lgdf reductions. Now therefore be it resolved that the Village of Riverside urges the General Assembly and the Governor to restore Lgdf to the promised 10% rate so municipalities across Illinois may provide basic levels of service and lessen the reliance on property taxes. I do want to note that attached to your agenda history sheet is an informational fact sheet provided from the Illinois Municipal League for your reference.
Thank you, Manager Francis. Can we have a motion and a second, please?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Alex. Second?
Second.
Trustee Pollock? Village Clerk Haley, please call the roll.
Aye.
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 Second item is an ordinance amending the budget for the fiscal year commencing January 1st, 2020 and ending December 31st, 2020 for various additional expenditures and revenues. Director Johns.
Good evening. Before you tonight is a budget amendment for fiscal year 2020. While several departments within the general fund exceeded their budgeted expense, the general fund is estimated to end fiscal year 2020 with an estimated surplus of approximately $646,000. Yes. The Harlem Business District number 2 and 3 funds, debt service funds, motor fuel tax fund, and police pension fund also exceeded their budgeted amounts. Before you is an ordinance amending the budget, which is required by our audit process.
May I have a motion to approve the ordinance, please?
I'll make the motion.
Trustee Alex, second.
I'll second.
Ed, please call the roll.
Aye.
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 Number C is a resolution approving and authorizing the execution of an intergovernmental agreement between the Village of Riverside and the Communal Rail Division of the Regional Transportation Authority, Metra, regarding funding for the landscape work at the Metra Riverside train station. Director Tab.
Thank you, President Ballerine. The Village Board allocated $10,000 as part of the 2021 Capital Improvement Plan to fund a planting bed landscape project in front of the Riverside train station. If you look in your package, you will see the landscape planting plan attached. The design of the landscape plan incorporates similar elements and plant species to those used in the Metra pedestrian access project located to the east of the entrance. The planting bed project will complete the landscaping on the south side of the Riverside train station. To supplement the estimated $20,000 cost of the planting bed install, Village staff requested and was awarded a grant from the Commuter Rail Division of the Regional Transportation Authority, also known as Metra, in the not-to-exceed amount of $10,000. The funding allocated as part of the capital improvement plan in conjunction with the Metra grant will cover the cost of the planting bed installation. The awarding of the Metra grant requires the village to enter into a formal intergovernmental agreement with the Commuter Rail Division of the Regional Transportation Authority. This IGA outlines the financial, construction, and reporting requirements that the village will have to adhere to in order to receive the appropriated funds. The IGA has been reviewed by the village attorney. If anyone has any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
There are no questions. Can we have a motion to approve?
I'll make that motion.
Did you have a question, Kristen? Please.
What is the timetable for the work?
5 years. Oh, for the grant or the IGA is good for 5 years. The work is proposed for this fall.
The work will happen this fall?
The work will happen this fall.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
We have a motion from Alex. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Kristen. Kathy, please call the roll.
Aye.
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 We have a resolution authorizing a $538,000 inter-fund transfer from the general fund to the capital project fund to fund capital expenditures. Capital Director Johns.
Good evening. Before you tonight is a resolution authorizing $538,000 transfer from the general fund to the capital fund. This includes a $125,000 transfer from the general fund Parks and Rec assignment in accordance with the 43 East Quincy repayment schedule, $155,000 transfer for 2020 capital expenses, and $258,000 for 2021 capital expenses.
We have any questions for Director Johns? And if I can have a motion to approve?
It hurts, but I'll make the motion.
Trustee Gallegos, can I have a second, please?
I'll second.
Trustee Clarity. Village Clerk Haley, please call the roll.
Aye.
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 we have a discussion of upcoming special events and general special event procedures. Director Melchiotti, please.
Thank you, President Ballerine, Village Trustees, and Manager Francis. I'm just excited to be talking about special events. Last year, the Parks and Recreation Department had to innovate by modifying existing events and creating new ones. Our mindset was, what can we offer to residents under the guidelines during a pandemic? We explored virtual events like Zoom visits from the Bunny, weekly story time, and drive-through events like Holiday Hello with Santa, the Haunted House, and our drive-in movies. We even brought the Independence Day Parade to residents driving throughout the streets of Riverside. This year, our mindset is much different. It has become, how do we offer our traditional events in the safest manner? With a proven track record of running safe events and programs throughout this challenging time, we have put together a calendar of events that we believe can be held safely, and we remain ready to pivot quickly based on rapidly changing guidelines. We are hoping that the information submitted provides the board with a foundation for discussion of special events, and I'm happy to answer any questions or provide additional information. If you'd like, I could run down the calendar of events, or I could answer questions based on discussion.
I have a question. Just on one of the applications, just the curbside cuisine, the food truck event in 6 days. Is that happening? Do we have food trucks? Is the event on?
As of now, it is. We are trying to lock in 2 vendors. We've had some interest. I will say that the food truck events were much easier to schedule during the pandemic when they had less options. Now that things are opening up, there's much more competition. But we do have interest, but until we receive their insurance paperwork and the health code paperwork, we can't confirm it. So the worst possible scenario is that we would reschedule, but as of today, we are still hoping that by tomorrow we can receive their paperwork and we can start advertising for next week.
Is there a deposit that we're requesting?
I'm sorry, I didn't
Do we
hear.
request a deposit for the vendors?
We don't.
We're waiving the deposit for the
No,
food trucks?
we charge a fee to participate.
Oh, a fee.
Right.
A fee, yeah. So, okay, so if we charge a fee, then it's more likely that they'll actually show up and not cancel. I'm sort of familiar with the food truck industry. It's really hard to get them to commit.
Right.
But another idea that was discussed sort of in the EDC commission meeting was making it a deposit. If we can, because I know that it's hard to get food trucks here to Riverside because we're small. Are you hearing that from some of the vendors?
We are. Some of the vendors that were no's were either that they flatly said that the population wasn't big enough, or they wanted us to guarantee at least $1,000 in sales, which we can't really do. So the fee, like you said, it's actually twofold. It does, it's a better chance that they will show up and confirm for that day, and then it also covers our administrative and electrical costs for the day of the event.
Yeah, that's right. And how much is it?
I believe it's $125.
Okay, thank you.
Ron, can you share with us who that food truck on May 26th may be?
Not till we confirm.
Okay.
We last year we had we actually confirmed one and we had to switch it, and we had a couple people show up and were disappointed. So
the other exciting thing on this list is June 2nd through October 5th, the farmers market is coming back to Riverside, so that's exciting. Thank you.
absolutely, that was one of the reasons why the food truck event was scheduled for the 26th. It's actually, we did the same thing last year. The Wednesdays before and after the market, we bookended with food truck events, but the farmers market will start on June 2nd.
Hey, Ron, can you share with us what the most current up-to-date rules are during this phase, the bridge phase I think that we're in, from the governor's orders and CDC, health department, et cetera?
I can. I will say I've had conversations with my peers at park districts and recreation departments, and one of the most challenging things is the lack of consistency between CDC guidelines and IDPH guidelines. We tend to defer to IDPH guidelines. But one good example is that while they have for schools granted 3 feet social distance, for summer camps, they have not updated that yet. It's still 6 feet. So for some of the events, so in the bridge phase for flea and farmers markets, the new guidelines are 30 people per 1,000 square feet. So they don't, you have to basically go out and measure. They don't give you a definitive number. Same thing for recreation. Indoor is the lesser of 100 people or 50% capacity. Outdoor is maximum groups of 100, while multiple groups are permissible with distancing. They do have a subcategory, again, that they have spectator events and social events, so you would have to define where it falls in the category.
Okay.
But social events indoor are 250 people and outdoor are 500 people. And of course, there's the guidelines about masks for vaccinated people, but that has yet to be defined clearly in Illinois as well.
Okay. I do have a question about RAW because it's going to be indoors at the train station.
Right, so RAW in its traditional form will not take place, but they will be doing, every year they do a spectacle, so an art display will be in the train station on the weekend. I believe the days are 12th and 13th. So that'll be a standalone art display, and we'll work with community service officers to provide access to the building.
And in their application, they're hoping for hundreds of people to attend. Is that right?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
In their application, they're hoping for hundreds of people to attend.
I still couldn't.
Okay, I'll take it.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. In their application, they were hoping for hundreds of people to attend the RAW spectacle at the train station.
I
That's
believe
what
they,
I read.
I believe they meant throughout the day, but we would.
Okay, I think Chairperson might be able
Absolutely.
I'll ask her directly. Is there going to be someone at the doors? Okay. Is there going to be someone at the doors to make sure that limit of indoor capacity is not going to be exceeding? Okay, that's the only concern I have.
We'll be there the whole time.
Okay.
So if I may for a moment.
Please.
If you look at your calendars, this coming weekend is the weekend before Memorial Day, which historically has been Riverside Arts Weekend. If you've been to it, you know the last few have been very cold and very rainy. So last year, we moved it to the second weekend in June. So it will be June 12th and 13th. Obviously, we didn't have one last year, but we are having one this year. It is not the full juried arts fair. Again, we didn't know what the public health guidelines were going to be, so we're going to wait for that for next year. But we are having the spectacle. It will be unveiled at 10 o'clock on the 12th at the train station. So I hope everybody comes out in stages and comes to look at it and check it out.
Okay.
Any other questions about Raw? All right. Thanks,
Thank
Ron.
you.
Thank you. Good luck with that.
A couple other things that I'd like to mention on here is one is a couple of new events. The Friends of the Fourth 5K race, which is on a new date, June 26th. Can you give us your reasoning and your ideas on that?
Absolutely. For those that don't know the role that Friends of the Fourth have played in recent years, the Friends of the Fourth were created at a time when our budget was extremely limited, and they were able to raise funds to help support the Independence Day festivities. Since then, we have worked with them and basically their role has been to raise funds to enhance the Independence Day festivities. So we're always looking for ways to work with them as they've supported the department and the events for many years. This year, we are in discussions of providing the typically the July 4th parade. That's another point that I would like to bring up. This has only happened twice in the 18 years that I've been here, but when the 4th of July falls on a Sunday, we typically move the events to the 2nd and 3rd so that we don't compete with any community or church groups and everyone can participate and be spectators. So
The parade, if approved, would occur on July 3rd, but we are in discussions about lengthening the route to provide more green space, more spacing, so that people can come out and safely view the parade. With that in mind, the parade will be longer, and there would be no way to do the 5K run and the parade on the same day. So we were already in discussions about how could we offer the 5K. Staff had worked with our timing company with staggered start times and pens designated by your typical running time. We are able to do that, but it will have to be a standalone event. So we took the opportunity to create a new event, the Friends of the Fourth 5K, so we were able to provide residents with a 5K, but also still have that fundraising aspect, because a portion of your registration fee will go to Friends of the Fourth and help support Independence Day activities.
Very excited about the 5K race coming back to Riverside. We have an interesting shirt design this year, so you might want to just join to get the shirts. A local artist, Pat Carollo from Speakeasy Custom Tattoo in Wicker Park, designed our shirts this year. So it's going to be a collector's item. So even those that don't run, you might want to get that shirt. When will the parade route be advertised, and how will it be advertised?
After discussions tonight, if there's consensus for the board, I will work with Village Manager Francis and Public Safety Director Buckley to determine the best route. And also, we need to, at this point, whether it's events or programs, we need to plan for every contingency, which includes possibly moving to Phase 5. So we'll discuss that parade route and then advertise that to the public.
And we are having back the Medina Magic Carpet guys and the drum line from the Bears line. So we will have some interesting things. So I have a motion to approve special event applications for Curbside Cuisine on May 26th, Riverside Ride on June 5th, Fishing Derby on June 5th, Raw Spectacular at the train station on June 12th and 13th, Friends of the Fourth 5K on June 26th. I assume I can do this all as one, correct? Okay, can I have a motion, please?
Motion made.
Trustee Gallegos, may I have a second?
I'll second.
Trustee Clarity. Village Clerk Haley, please call the roll.
Aye.
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 Last item on new business is the discussion regarding the use of herbicide on the village green spaces. Director Tab, can you please help us with that?
Sure, thank you. The Public Works Department is responsible for the maintenance of all green spaces throughout the village of Riverside. There are 87 acres of green space within the village. Now, in hindsight, I should have bolded that sentence right there, because 87 acres is an extremely large amount of grass to cut. So this might be a shameless plug for my department. We do a great job at it, but it is quite the effort. This 87 acres encompasses all the parks, triangles, medians, and areas adjacent to the Des Plaines River and First Avenue. The cutting of these 87 acres takes approximately 1 week, when fully staffed with 2 full-time and 2 seasonal employees cutting Monday through Friday, 6 to 7 hours per day. During the spring, dandelions and other weeds sprout and grow at varying rates depending on the temperature, amount of sun, and level of precipitation, often exceeding our 1 week cycle time. To combat the accelerated growth of the weeds, particularly dandelions, the Public Works Department has been mowing until dark during the week and on Saturdays. The associated costs are documented in Table 2, as seen below. The duration of the mowing, of the increased mowing, will of course be dictated by the weather. The alternative to simply mowing down the dandelions would be to spray them with herbicide. The village has done partial spraying of weeds in recent years, primarily to control fence lines and perimeters of parking lots. However, the practice of spraying the entire village has not taken place since 2016. During 2020, turf was not sprayed at all due to the lack of manpower and budgetary cuts attributed to COVID. Should the board elect to begin widespread spraying again, The application would be administered by one of 3 full-time licensed applicators that the village has on staff. The application, weather dependent, takes a single person approximately 1 month to spray the entire village. This represents 14.3% of staff just to spray the weeds. The chemical and labor costs associated with spraying weeds annually with village staff are represented again below in Table 2. If the village elected to hire a contractor to spray like many of our neighboring towns do, the cost of the single application would be approximately $7,600. Again, that's for a single application. Staff is requesting the board to engage in formal discussion on weed control and provide direction on how to manage weeds moving forward through either increased mowing cycles or reverting back to widespread herbicide application. It is important to note that per the manufacturer's instructions of the herbicide, Public Works does not spray areas that are in close proximity to the river, just to note that. Okay. I'll open it up to discussion and questions on this topic.
Before we start discussing, I'd ask everyone to speak loudly into their microphones. Thank you, Chief Buckley, for helping Director Tab with that.
Appreciate that, Director Buckley.
So is there any discussion?
If I may.
Trustee Hannon, please.
Do you want a motion first?
I don't know if it was the rain or the fact that we all missed last spring because of COVID, but driving through the village several weeks ago, you were struck at the number of dandelions, weeds. Had an opportunity to drive by the big ballpark when a girls' softball game was going on, and literally the ball got lost among the dandelions. And unfortunately, this situation occurred over Mother's Day, and my mother had a chance to comment on her observation on what type of village did I live in, and weren't they taking care of things, as among the other criticisms that I received. But that's for a different discussion. I understand some of the concerns on letting the weeds grow. I did ask Village Manager Francis for some background on the herbicide and looked through the safety information. And, one of the things that struck out to me was that it had, safety approval for land animals. They use birds as an example. So I feel very comfortable from a usage point of view that the use of the herbicide would not be harmful to the kids playing it out, would not be harmful to animals. But I think, especially around the commercial area, downtown area, our beautiful commons area, Big Paul Park, those need to be maintained. And I would strongly urge a spraying. I defer to the village manager to determine what's the most cost effective between using the existing staff or using outside contractor.
Megan?
Director Tab, do you recommend just one application? If I'm looking at Table 2 of the cost of $3,450, that's for one application?
We typically do one application in the spring.
Okay, and are you able to quantify for us what other work is not getting done during that time if the village is doing it?
As you can see in the table, there is 120 hours that are spent spraying weeds. And typically, our 3 applicators, one is the forester, and the other 2 are in the water department. So as you can imagine, springtime between the tree planting program and the enormous number of Julie locate tickets that we get because of all the work going on in the village, the water department is busy as well. So that being said, regardless of the approach we take, and if the board does choose to go back, we will make it work, is all I can tell you.
And if you didn't spray, if the village didn't spray and we didn't do contractually, right now, are you proposing to do additional mowing, or was the result this year just the normal amount of mowing?
So initially, we were doing a normal amount of mowing with our 2 full-time staff that we have. We don't have seasonals in place right now. They're beginning the end of May. Typically, we pull from college students, they're in school, and so forth. We have, as of recent, began mowing till dark and on Saturdays. So the costs you see in the table are associated with 2 weeks worth of mowing, extra mowing, with 3 guys.
And is that extra mowing,
It shortens our cycle time.
is that what I'm getting at? Is that extra mowing to accommodate, resident displeasure with the dandelions?
It is.
Okay. And so if you weren't doing the extra mowing, at what point in the season would the dandelions be cut and not expected to grow again?
So,
Ish.
You're right. Of course, it's weather dependent, right? It seems like they came a little earlier this year than typical. By the end of May, they should be gone. And really, the additional cutting was just to keep the dandelions low. The underlying grass didn't necessarily need to be cut as frequently. It was more to keep the dandelions. If we were to cut our normal cycle, like I said, it's about a week. By doing the additional cutting, we were able to probably shorten that by a day. It's not a huge number, but it's what we're able to do with the staff we have. So I'm not saying we accelerated. They're going to grow as they grow. We cut them down as often as we can. If we didn't work the extra hours, they would just appear, they'd be longer or taller for a longer period of time, that's all.
So if we didn't spray and we didn't do additional mowing, they would periodically get mowed.
Approximately once a week. That's our cycle time. We hit everywhere.
And by the end of May, ish, we would
It's
see
normally
the
right,
natural resolution of the dandelion problem.
Approximately 3 weeks worth of excessive flowering and going to seed is observed. And after those 3 weeks, they don't sprout as voraciously as they do initially in the season. And by end of May, early June, they're there, but they're not sprouting and going to seed. So in the middle of the end of summer, you don't even notice the dandelions for the most part, unless you really look into the grass itself.
Right.
So the direction we're looking for is, do we want to either, because there's a cost associated with it.
Right.
So we can either maintain our normal cutting cycle
At no additional cost.
at no additional cost, because we're already there. We can cut to dark or on Saturdays, and the price here is for a 2-week window. We can we can extend that if need be, or we can start as soon as they start sprouting. We can cut later. We're talking potentially 3 to 4 weeks, so at double the cost. Or we can revert back to spraying either in-house, where we have the cost of the herbicide alone, but it's that 120 hours that we lose of productivity in other areas. Or we can go contractually, as you see in the chart that the majority of the towns around us do, for a cost of $7,600 per spraying, because we have 87. We don't spray all 87 acres. That's how much we cut, though.
Right. It seems compelling to me that without cost, we still remedy the dandelion problem, perhaps a little bit slower than everybody would like, but without cost and without chemicals on our normal cycle,
It will end eventually.
it will resolve
Right.
itself.
Exactly.
Yes, I have a follow-up question to what Trustee Clarity was asking, and that is, what is the extent to which Public Works has investigated alternatives to chemical treatments? So, for example, the aeration of the soil or soil quality can impact things like dandelion growth, for example. There are also potentially the availability of organic alternatives, although when I inquired with Jessica Francis on that one, she sent me back an estimate for approximately $41,000 just for product, which
Right.
strikes me as excessive. But
Right.
what has your department done to investigate alternate means besides chemicals?
So we have not done an aeration investigation. We have inquired as to an organic alternative, and the feedback we're getting from our landscaper, the supplier of the current chemical we use, is organic alternatives do not work on weeds. There is an organic fertilizer, which supplements the growth of the grass. It keeps it greener, it makes it grow faster. But from a standpoint of a selective herbicide, we're being told the organics do not work. There is a non-select alternative, which many people are probably familiar with, vinegar, salt, dish soap, but it kills everything. Wherever you spray it, stuff dies. So we haven't done an in-depth study because to this point, it has been requested, and we have sprayed, this most, as of recent, we've kind of been going, on our traditional path. We could do that. We can definitely look into the organic alternative and the cost of manpower to do a full aeration of the 87 acres. But again, that is labor intensive in itself.
I was just wondering if there might be an offset, because right now with the chemical application, it looks like you have your licensed applicators who are few and far between, and also having their time better spent
right. So
in other
kind
areas.
To put it into context, we have 7 full-time staff. So when we take one of them away for 120 hours every spring, that's a substantial reduction in other things that we could be doing.
I do understand.
So whether it's the fertilizing or if we were to entertain the idea of a full town aeration, again, it's a guy on a tractor pulling an aerator behind it for an unknown number of hours at this point. So it's somebody that we are taking out of the workflow for other items. And prior to 2016, or even including 2016, we did set aside that person for a month to spray the weeds. It's just recently, in the last couple of years, that they haven't done a full round. It's more of a spot treatment of sorts.
Thank you.
Doug, please.
Thank you. I was going to ask about other alternatives too, so thank you for that, Aberdeen. I think one thing that we would want to look at is selective applications. I mean, I can see ball fields where, you don't want to, maybe we want to apply, maybe other areas we don't. But the other thing the main thing I wanted to comment on was, it seems to be an assumption that dandelions are nothing but bad. And I don't know if that's true or not.
Well,
I've heard that they have a positive benefit.
Right, they're food for pollinators in the spring. That's I guess the counter argument to spraying or removing them is they provide a food source for pollinators in the spring,
Right.
when many other items are not available.
They're the first pollinator, I believe is.
Definitely.
One thing we've kind of used other municipalities as we can measure ourselves against. We really can't measure ourselves against anybody. I mean, we have so much land per capita that
We do.
it blows all these other. It's probably as much as all 5 of those towns. But along Doug's point of selective herbicide, you can also, is there selective cuttings? Is there, is Swan Pond, I look at, for example, Brookfield. I was a seasonal at Brookfield when I was in high school and college, and my job was to cut grass, and we used to cut Kiwanis Park around every one of those trees. Could we do selective cuttings? So leave Swan Pond to go natural. I think it's a beautiful park. Nobody's playing soccer down there. We have a very active birding community, nature network. Does it make sense to try to figure out where we can apply herbicide to get the most bang for the buck? Like Trustee Hannon said, the downtown, our central business district. Apply multiple mowings where we have our second tier, which would be ball fields and commons. And then, your third tier would be, that's your job, that's not my job. But something like that? And are there areas that we could think about that are best left natural?
We can definitely not cut Swan Pond. Obviously, last year, for those that have noticed, we were not able to initially due to the flooding, and that kind of took us through the end of the year for lack of manpower. We didn't have any seasonals last year, and once the grass grows to a certain point, it's difficult to cut with the machinery we have. If the board were to elect or choose to allow Swan Pond to go natural, we wouldn't cut it, obviously. We did get some positive feedback on how it looked last year, especially in the fall when it kind of went brown. There were a number of photographers down taking pictures, and it looked very natural. There are opinions that it should be cut as well. So there's a discussion that would need to be had prior to currently we're cutting it. That's the approach we've taken year after year, is we cut it. Last year we couldn't due to the flooding, but we have cut it this year and would continue to.
I just wanted to point out as well, going to Trustee Clarity's point, we do have an ordinance on the books that talks about accumulation of weeds and grasses over 8 inches in height. That is if you let your grass grow to a certain height, let your weeds grow to a certain height, you're going to get fined. The village is going to come in and charge you for mowing your lawn. And then on the second point of just wait till May, the only thing in my mind is, when it snows in January, it's going to be gone by March, so why don't we just wait till March to plow? I mean, to me, just wait till it blows through does not address the concern of, there's a aesthetic to Riverside, and, the dandelions, over a foot high, the dandelions that are now growing on all sorts of people's lawns, in the central business district, along the commons where people in the springtime come to Riverside to look at it, to see it overrun, like a gravel lot, down at 12th and Ogden, it just is not the aesthetic that we're looking to have. So, I agree with Trustee Ballerine, or President Ballerine's observation that, Swan Pond, to the extent people are concerned about pollinators, that's a beautiful large area, it's a natural area. I got a lot of great feedback. Last year you guys mowed some paths through that, and people found that very enjoyable. So I think that's a great compromise between the two schools of thought of, let everything grow, let the bees have their fun, versus, let's make this look like a landscape gem like it's supposed to be.
So I just want to make the point, we do not spray Swan Pond.
Right.
Right, because it's in a floodplain and so forth. Ironically enough, I believe it's probably due to the flooding that there are not many dandelions down there. I think the flooding may suppress them in a way that, there are not a lot down there. Neither here nor there, but interesting observation nonetheless.
So I think, go ahead.
Well, I appreciate both sides of the conversation. We have been conditioned to think beauty can only be found in perfectly manicured green spaces, so any alternative could take some getting used to. But I think we should continue to minimize use of herbicide and increase mowing if it's sustainable from a manpower and cost standpoint. I also do worry about staff exposure to the herbicides. It's just a lot of spraying. Do you wear protective gear?
We do. We wear Tyvek, the white Tyvek suits, gloves, respirators as well.
I think we have, I don't know if we have a consensus of anything, but can we think about, we're done this year, but can we think over the summer of an attack plan that answers both the concerns of Trustee Hannon while addressing the concerns of the people that would not want herbicides? So can we put together a tiered system where we have, 1A, 1B, leave Swan Pond, go natural, possibly, spray our central business district to, and maybe even throw in the commonses to see what that would cost. I have a hard time wanting to, I get where we want to spray the commons, but I don't know if I want to spray Big Ball Park and where Turtle Park is.
Right, so on that note, because I don't have an opinion on this subject, me creating a tiered system, if somebody's left out of the tier and I don't spray them versus somebody that's included in the tier and I spray them, who's to decide how that goes?
Well, I'm not talking about spraying. I'm talking more about frequency of mowing.
Okay.
In my simple director's hat as Director of Public Works, I would leave Swan Pond, go natural, and do a path. I would put my tier 1 for multiple mowings, all of our commons, our Scotswood Commons, our Big Ball Park, and the Long Common Commons. Our tier 2 would be the other triangles. Maybe tier 1 would also be along Riverside Drive. Tier 2 would be the other triangles and what other along the riverbank, on Blooming Bank and things like that. Herbicide would be used in our central business district and to a minimum. I think I walked by the green parking lot and it was completely covered with dandelions. And it's probably, 10 by 10. So, you could spray that, you could spray over by the train station and things like that. So that's the kind of thing that
So you're looking spraying the CBD and then increase mowing on other parks throughout town.
And what I'd like to know is, will that answer the concerns of Trustee Hannon, that we want a village that we could be proud of that looks good, and also answers the concerns of Trustee Evans and some other trustees that really don't want, and myself, that would really rather use herbicides to a minimum.
Right. So the increased mowing we've done in the last 2 weeks. We have put as many guys on mowers as we possibly could. So whether the increased mowing is to yours or the board's satisfaction, only time would tell, because there's only so many hours during the day that we can cut, and we have a finite number of people and mowers that we can roll out for that. So we can implement that plan where we can spray the CBD, we can allow Swamp Pond to go natural, if that's the board's, if that's what you guys are interested in. And then we can increase the mowing in the areas of town, such as the commons that are potentially high traffic areas. And then the lower tier would be triangles that branch out from those. Am I getting the general consensus?
Wasn't the increased mowing what was adopted this spring?
Say that one more time.
Wasn't the increased mowing the plan that was adopted this spring?
We put that into implementation within the last 3 weeks.
Okay,
And
because quite frankly, that didn't work.
Well, it didn't work because they increased mowing all 8,700 acres, or whatever.
87 acres, right.
What I'm saying is we would increase mowing in our tier 1 areas faster. And so the mowings on Scotswood Commons and the mowings in, the common areas, our heavy trafficked areas would be done on a faster rotation.
As fast as we could.
I'm trying to,
middle ground is, I'm sure we can get there. It's just, it would be, we would do it to the best of our ability as far as the increased mowing.
I think the question is, how do the trustees feel about the general use of herbicides throughout the village?
I'll go first. I'd like to limit it as much as possible.
I can't hear a word you just said.
I can't hear anything down there either, but I'd like to limit it as much as possible. I mean, I can't really say I would object to any herbicide, but boy, I'd really like to limit it as much as possible.
Okay. Aberdeen?
I think in the interests of public safety, there is so much we still don't know about so many of these chemical compounds in the environment. I would do everything possible to stay away from or minimize herbicide use, chemical herbicides.
Alex?
I'd also be in favor of limited use as well.
Could I just ask a question? Sure. If the particular herbicide that the village is using is deemed safe for surface animals, where is the concern? I mean, what, could I get a specific reason why we don't want herbicides as opposed to herbicides are bad? And let's talk about the specific herbicide that the village is using, not general herbicides. We're not going to talk about Roundup. Let's talk about this specific herbicide and why specifically people are against it.
I think the answer is people, if you're killing the weeds, you're killing bees. And if you can't spray it now this is me talking, I'm not talking for anybody else. If you can't spray it in Swan Pond because it flows into the waterway, and if the people that have to spray it have to wear respirators and Tyvek, thank you, respirators and Tyvek suits, then it has some harmful effect. Do I know what that harmful effect is? Can I answer that? No, but I look at the reasoning and what I see, and you kill off the dandelions. They're the first pollinators for our bees. I mean, that's one thing, and maybe that's...
Yeah, and we said we're going to set aside an area. I mean, we're not going to spray the whole town. I get that. But, that's why I looked at the specific herbicide that we were going to use and was satisfied when they said it's safe for surface animals. Not just, sometimes harmful in high doses. It's safe for surface animals. And in my mind, that's dogs, that's kids, that's cats, that's squirrels, that's the rabbits. I get the general concern about herbicides. There was the big Roundup case that everyone heard about, but this specific herbicide is not Roundup. And I just want to make sure we're making a decision based on science, not based on fear and anecdotal science.
Okay, thank you. Megan?
To me, there's a greater than, to me, there's some difficult to quantify risk or potential for risk, and I don't personally have that big of a problem with the dandelions, that I think it outweighs that potential risk, and I view our residents as slightly different than surface animals. And I mean that respectfully, but I just think that, my kids roll around in the grass. I roll around in the grass with my kids, and I don't see a compelling reason to use them to risk it.
Kristen?
No, as I stated earlier, just think we should minimize herbicide use if possible. I understand Ed's point, and if there's a safe herbicide that we can use, then we should do some research into that.
Okay, I think do you have enough to move forward? What does everybody feel about leaving Swan Pond going natural?
I think it looks pretty natural.
Doug?
I like the way it's been looking. I like, though, the fact that they mow pathways through it. I think that gives access to people. Other than that, I'm all in favor of the natural look.
I concur with Doug.
I just have one question on that one. Does that have an effect on the mosquitoes that are bred down there by letting it go natural? And we have a certain flood events?
It all depends on the weather. If it's a very wet spring and there's pooling water, it may, Swan Pond is often flooded. I couldn't say one way or the other, the effect it has on mosquitoes. I couldn't tell you that.
Megan?
I like Swan Pond. I'm fine with the proposal to let it be a little bit more natural, but put the paths in it. I think the residents enjoy the paths.
I agree with Megan.
Thank you. Okay, so we got Swan Pond finished. That gives you more, check that box off, that gives you more time to make sure that that we can knock those dandelions down as fast as possible. And I think we all agree that herbicides can be used, but to keep it to a bare minimum if we could.
So moving forward, what I take away from that is the CBD area where traditionally we don't have kids playing, animals playing. We will apply there. Outside of the CBD, we will just increase the frequency of mowing.
Especially in our high traffic areas and our commons which are
specifically.
our signature stamp. Okay,
Message
thank you.
received.
Thank you. Good discussion. I appreciate that. We have a E that has been added on FGH.
Thank you, President Ballerine. I did intend to bring it up under my manager's report, but with all the festivities with Chief Weitzel, I became flustered and overlooked that, so I do apologize. The item that I wanted to bring up to the village board to see if there was some guidance or interest is, obviously we did the COVID relief with the liquor licenses and the outdoor, enhancing the outdoor spaces. We've recently received some inquiries from different businesses. No one has actually submitted or finalized different business licenses, but they are potentially sales tax generating businesses and places for eating tax generating businesses, and some of them are looking at places in our business districts. All of these are good things. One of the things that I wanted to see if the board would be interested in is somewhat in line with our COVID relief initiatives for businesses, is whether or not the board would be interested in doing waivers for new businesses for their 1 year of their business license, their health inspection, and their fire inspections for year 1. And my thought process is, and I can work with Director Johns additionally more, but my thought process is, if we get a new business coming in, we're going to be collecting that places for eating tax. They're going to be enhancing the storefront. We're going to be getting also our regular sales tax, EAV growth with that enhancement of that storefront. And so it would be beneficial to the village. And so I wanted to, before staff started doing significant due diligence on this, whether or not the board would be interested in us crafting an ordinance, and it would specifically be driven towards new businesses coming to the village that generate sales tax revenue and places for eating tax revenue. So if you don't mind, President Ballerine, seeing if there's consensus amongst the board members.
I will start with Doug.
I could not hear anything other than something about business licenses and COVID.
Sorry, I thought it was projecting. We've received a number of inquiries, so I'm going to give you the highlights. We've received a number of inquiries over the past month or two for potential new businesses to Riverside. And we did the COVID relief for existing businesses and new businesses related to liquor license and outdoor cafes. And what I would like to know is if the board would be interested in evaluating and permitting waivers for very specifically the business license, the health inspection fees for the first year, and the fire inspection fees for the first year, to attract those new businesses to those storefronts based on the inquiries we received over the past couple of months. It would specifically be targeted for sales tax generating storefronts.
I'm certainly interested in learning more. I do want to know what the revenue impacts are and what the real benefits might be to our business community, but certainly open to a discussion on it.
I too am interested in learning more about it. I think that the purpose is to attract new businesses. It is an incentive for a specific type of business to come in, and I think that proposal sounds tailored to that end goal.
I too would also be in favor of that.
Yeah, I agree. I was recently informed by some of the commissioners of the EDC that some of the fees tend to be burdensome on new business owners. So I would be interested in looking into that a little bit further.
I like the idea. I think there was a concern on looking to make sure they generate enough revenue, so maybe a rebate type arrangement that if they do generate more sales tax than the fees, there's some type of rebate or give back, but there's got to be a break-even point on what they're going to do before we waive the fees.
I'm supportive of learning more. I think startup costs for new businesses can be a Herculean task, and that might do something or go a little way towards encouraging business in Riverside.
Thank you.
Thank
you have enough?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Trustee reports and communications. This is a new item that has been added to the agenda, and my idea of this item was just to allow any trustees that would like to inform the residents of events or special interest that they feel important, that this would be the time to do it. So does anybody want to take me up on that? Yes, sir.
I do. And I know, Alex, you'll talk about what the American Legion is doing on Memorial Day, but several years ago the village had a grant to refurbish the garden in front of the train station. I don't know what the formal name is. I call it the Garden of Remembrance, but has the names of the Riverside residents who died in the various wars and conflicts. And I'd urge the residents over this Memorial Day weekend to go there, go with your kids. And if you have not been to that area, it's very moving, very tranquil, and just reflect on those names. It's in my mind, a nice place to stop off and sort of gather yourself as to what's important by looking at those names. So I think Memorial Day is one of those days to take that opportunity.
Thank you. Riverside 54, to be exact. 54 names.
Really? Okay.
Anyone else? Okay. Can I have, we have a need for an executive session tonight, but can I have a motion to adjourn in a second, please?
Motion to adjourn to executive session.
Trustee Gallegos, a second.
I'll second.
Trustee Clarity. Village Clerk Haley, please call the roll.
Aye.
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 Thank you all for coming. I appreciate it. Have a wonderful evening.
President Ballerini, just to clarify, the intent of the board is not to reconvene an open session following executive session, correct?
That is our intent.
Okay.
Thank you.